Good morning, Mark.
Hi, it's another webinar, another update. There isn't that much really, apart from detail, which we will go through. So it is actually important to us more than you, but because we do this in the background. But it's also important for you guys to know. And it's Happy Picnic Day and Happy Panic Day, which I thought was funny, for Panic Day. But that's not. I suppose what they say in there is that you should actually not worry so much and have it as a day where you look at things in a more positive light. And this time in 1995, I remember this game, the All Blacks, Jonah Lumu scored loads of try against England, and he trounced over Mike Catt, and that was a big trouncing, 45-29 defeat. So anybody who played rugby and was around in those times would have definitely watched that, and that was not a good day for England. But hey, and it's Paul McCartney's birthday. I don't know if anyone else has any birthdays. I don't know if Mark, any of your family do, but and it was also the Battle of Waterloo, 1815. Whose birthday?
I do. It's my birthday today.
Oh, sorry, Steve. Yeah, I forgot. Oh, I feel bad boss now. My goodness. Yeah, happy birthday, Steve. I should have put that on here. I even knew that yesterday, so I apologize. Happy birthday, Steve. We'll have to sing happy birthday at the end. No, we will refrain from that because you won't want to hear me sing. Although, when you wash your hands, you're supposed to be singing happy birthday. So obviously,
That's good
it's
practice.
something we all probably sing quite a bit. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just share my screen now. And what we've got in there is basically just some of the details on what has actually come about with the... Well, I need to try and find it. Bear with me. So just bear with me 1 minute. But I just want to make sure I've got a screen that I can actually share that's decent. But what it is we've had detail on how to actually go about doing this Flexi Furlough. So it does mean sort of more work for, well, our lovely Jason, and he's done a grand job on all this. But what that does also mean is that we've got things that we need to sort of be looking at in more detail. So the one thing is that we must submit this at the end of by the end of the previous month. So for July's, we have to submit that by the end of August. We'll be doing it well before that, so we try and do it within the month. And you can only do it for that 1 month. So what we have done in the past is done catch-ups. So there've been catch-ups on people who realize they should have furloughed earlier. So we've managed to do catch up over a few months. We can't do that from now on. And also, of course, you can only do somebody who's actually been furloughed. You can only, you have to have a minimum now from July of 7 days furloughed. Employees can basically do whatever number you want to work with you. So it's a flexi furlough, so they can do it, but you have to work out the hours that they've actually worked and have an hourly rate. It's easy if you do a day rate. So if they come in and do a day, it's easy to do that. So you work out the number of days they worked in a week on their contract, and then work it out on that basis that you have to pay. And then the employee must be paid 100% of the hourly rate by the employer when they are actually working. That's including NI contributions, employer NI as well. And the furloughed hours, it's basically whatever they've worked less their contractual hours. So if it's a 40-hour week and they've worked 3 hours, only 3 hours, they will get furlough for 37 hours of that week. We'll do it for the whole month, so we'll do a month at a time. So we'll be working that out, but you will need to tell us what hours anybody is working if they are on flexi furlough and they've already been furloughed. If they've not been furloughed by the 10th of June, I mean, we can, if somebody has been furloughed up to the 10th of June, we can still do that furloughing as of the end of this month, but after that, you won't be able to do it. So if you want to furlough somebody from the 10th or from the 11th of June, you can't do that now. There's just another thing as well. There's a second round of self-assessments. So people who, for self-employed, sorry. So self-employed people now, they can get a second round, and they have to actually sort of apply for that online. There's going to be more details on that, but there's not too many criteria on that as there weren't in the first one. But on the first round, they have to actually do that by the 13th of July. Otherwise, they won't get it. And that's 80% of their profits up to a maximum of 50. Anything over 50, anyone who's earned more than 50 in a self-assessment, in a self-employed role, will not be able to get it, which is the same as it always was. And I've just got a reminder here, just that employees can only be furloughed on or after the 1st of July if they're being furloughed at least 3 consecutive weeks or at the same time. Now, that's just what I was saying about the 10th of June. Is literally, that's the date, 10th of June. If you've not been furloughed by the 10th of June, you cannot actually get furlough going forward. And that's everything. So I'm going to stop sharing. So I hope we have got some questions here. Oh, I've got happy birthday to Steve, obviously, from Mark. Thank you, Mark. So one thing that we've got is a lot of people wanting to know about the Flexi Furlough. So Steve, I mean, a big question is about directors. So directors is the big one. If you furlough a director and they want to work, because obviously they're not on fixed contracts normally.
Yeah, I mean, directors are the tricky ones. Basically, the government has decided that hours is the way to work the calculation. That is going to create some complicated calculations for some people with variable hours. But yeah, directors are the tricky one, because as a rule, directors don't have contracted hours. I mean, it's quite rare for them to even have a sort of formal employment contract, especially with the small companies we deal with, where the directors are also the people doing all the day-to-day running of the company. What we're probably looking at is looking at a sort of standard working week of 40 hours for directors, and doing the calculations based on that. But we're also seeing what other accountants do. It must be said that the guidance does include the provision that you can, as long as your calculations are on a reasonable basis, then HMRC will not argue with them. But this is something that appears in legislation from time to time, reasonable, and reasonable is unfortunately something that is later ends up discussed in cases between HMRC and taxpayers, because HMRC take a different view of what is reasonable to the average taxpayer. So yeah, I mean, we're taking what we feel is a sensible, a defensible view. We are rather hoping that someone in government at some point between now and 1st of July, when the scheme is implemented, will actually realise this is a problem and give further guidance on it. But we will not hold our breath on that happening. We will take a sensible, a pragmatic view as we can, and essentially take a position that we are happy that we can defend with HMRC if they query about it.
A good point, Mark. Mark says that my hourly rate is less than £5, and that is an issue with directors. Our salaries are less. It doesn't have to be above the minimum wage, so you're okay. You can still claim for it, but you are right. It's not that much. And also, if you end up working more than 40 hours, which I know I definitely do, then it's going to be nonsensical. I mean, that's why we're doing the 40-hour week for directors, because it tends to be that, unless there's a reason not. But what we're looking at doing is just making a sensible decision, like Steve has said, and have it documented, whatever we decide. If there's no guidance as Steve said, we are going to be talking to other accountants as well, see what they're doing, making sure that we're all sort of doing a similar thing. And we're also going to just be looking out for any guidance. We don't have that many of our directors either not on furlough and thinking of working, or I know, Mark, you have been thinking of that, but it's just worth sort of bearing it all in mind when you are looking at doing that. We'll be asking for your hourly or days that you've actually worked. For a director, as Steve said, it's better to do a day. We don't really want to do an hourly one if we don't have to. It's better to do a day because it is so minuscule. If it's on an hour, it's just crazy. But we could do that if we have to. On a day would be easier, but for a director.
Yeah, I mean, it's a case of, as I say, reasonable approaches are allowed. If a daily count actually works out better, then we'll look at doing a daily count. I mean, the one thing to be aware of is once we've made a decision to use hours, days for a particular company, we will then have to be consistent with all the claims from there. So if you think a particular way better fits your working pattern, do give us feedback on that. And as long as we're happy, we can defend the way the calculations are done that will net you more money. Though obviously for most directors, not a lot more money, but anything that will get more money that we're happy we can defend as reasonable to HMRC. Yeah, we'll work with you on that.
Well, the question is there any more news on the budget, Steve?
The budget, no. Apart from it happening sometime early July, there's no more news on that. Quite surprisingly, no leaks so far as to what he's likely to be doing in the budget, which you'd normally expect a couple of weeks beforehand. So we will be keeping an eye on that. When the budget happens, we will be doing a write-up on it and circulating out to people. But no, at the moment, there's no news. Even a firm date hasn't been set, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, that's interesting. And do we have any more knowledge of any other support that could be coming through?
There's the discretionary grant scheme. I know here in Hastings, the council, because it's a discretionary grant scheme, it's a follow-up to the small business rates grant scheme. And the follow-up discretionary scheme, it's more aimed at people who, for some reason or other, don't pay rates. Maybe they have an office in a shared building where it's the landlord that pays the rates on the building. Maybe they have a stall in an open market, something like that. So it's intended for that, but because it's discretionary, each council is able to decide their own way of allocating that money. What Hastings has done is they've opened up a 2-week period of applications. We're in the middle of that now, opened on the 10th, closed on the 24th. Basically, people are allowed to apply, put their case to why they think they qualify for it, and the intention is that when that period closes, the council will review all those applications and then essentially divide the money up. So theoretically, the lower the number of applications for it, the more individual companies will be getting. But what councils are doing around the country, it's discretionary. They'll almost certainly all be doing their own thing. So it's worth getting onto your local council website, looking for discretionary grant applications. And if you haven't received the small business rate fund, I should say that the discretionary grant's definitely not open to anybody who has already received the small business rates grant. If you're a business in that position, get onto the council website, have a look. There should be something on there, but precisely what it is, council by council, we just don't know.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, that is very true. Is if you haven't had it, there could be something, and we have had some of our clients looking into that, and they're in London and they weren't able to get it. So it is on a council by council basis. So other than that, I don't think there is much else. I mean, I was actually trying to Google how much all of this support's actually been costing the UK government to date. I know I did it sort of in April time, because that's when it all came out. But I really don't have anything on that. I've just heard that we're starting more QE today. So we that they're buying everything in all the government bonds just to make sure we keep borrowing down for our government and us. So that's a good thing. to some people, not to others. Depends if you're a total monetarist or don't believe in that. But it does mean that their government will have cheaper money going forward for all this furloughing and all this support that we're actually doing, or they doing for us as businesses. Question from Mark: do you think that there may be any extension support based on sector?
There's been no indication they're planning to do any extension there. Obviously, there are certain industries that have been harder hit than others, and some which are going to struggle to get back together with social distancing rules in place. I mean, the most obvious ones is pubs, who were possibly going to have to end up taking on more staff because people can't come up, crowd around the bar to order drinks, or has to be socially distanced, and theatres as well won't be able to have full houses. I know in your case, your business is mainly evolved around events, many of which have been cancelled. I mean, something I normally be going to in 5 months' time was cancelled fairly early on here. So one would hope that in the period as we're running up to rebuild the economy, there will be more support available. It's possible that's something that they're looking at doing in the budget, because quite often in the budget they'll announce tax breaks for certain industries. There have been tax breaks for filming in the UK in previous years. So I'd say probably the budget is the place to look out for there. And if we find anything that is useful to particular clients, we will of course make sure we draw it to their attention.
That's a very good point, though, Mark, and good question. I mean, you may know this. My wife was actually, well, not you won't know this bit, but you might know hairdressers are opening up. My wife got called by a hairdresser yesterday, which was a good call for her because she's desperate to get her. Well, she's going to hate this on video, but she's desperate to get her roots done because they've all been coming through. So what they're doing there is they're taking one person in at a time. They're wearing face mask, was sort of a veil, not like a plastic veil, and they're going to have to wear masks, and they're just taking one client in at a time and doing the coloring or everything. So it's quite good to see and hear that hairdressers are coming back. The pubs is the big one, especially with pub gardens. I mean, with the weather having been good, obviously it's not at the moment, but it would be good to see something starting up. I've been watching Danish news, and in the Danish, everything's virtually back to normal, almost, not 100%, but almost. So everything's opened up, restaurants are opened up, everything. They've gone down to 1 meter. So obviously we've got this big, Boris has got people looking at the 1 meter rule, which is the World Health Organization. So if we move down to 1 meter, as you hear in all the media, then it'll be better for pubs, potentially, theaters and everything as well. So we're hoping, I'm hoping that things can start opening up, but everybody has to obviously be careful going forward. In Denmark, I have mentioned this before, they haven't had a second wave, which has made what they've done, which they thought that was going to happen. So they've actually now thinking that it's slightly different how it's working. Obviously, we've seen it in Beijing, but if there isn't a second wave, they're not sure why that's not happening, because they do have some cases with it. They tend to be people coming in from Sweden, because Sweden's had a very different policy, an open policy of carrying on as normal. So within Denmark, they're quite closed, and they have been, but it doesn't mean that if everybody here carries on acting the way we have, and maybe go down to the 1 meter, and we're still working, hopefully everything go back to normal, some more normality. It's never going to be normal again after this, I don't think, because everybody's got used to webinars, they've got used to working remotely as well. So even that's going to change the work environment as far as office space and everything like that as well. But hopefully, your events will start coming back if they start going to the 1 meter rule. They have, they're allowing 50 people in one place in Denmark. Then they're going to 100 and then 200. So it's gradually getting more. So they are following and looking at Denmark. I think we're also looking at other countries as well. So hopefully we will actually start progressing down a route where we won't need any support, and people will be able to operate on a more profitable basis. Because as you say, or alluding to, Mark, is with the 2 meter rule and everything. Pubs are, and Steve was saying, pubs aren't going to be able to make as much money because they're going to have the more costs as well. The same with restaurants. Is there any other questions? Because a lot of it is sort of speculation on what might happen going forward and how we will fare. I'm an optimist. I actually think things will be better than we think, and I also do believe that we will actually get more medicines and stuff quicker than we think as well. So hopefully that will happen. Obviously, we had the news yesterday with dexamoxilin or whatever. I can't remember the name. I don't know if you remember it, Steve. But
no, I'm just aware there's something. It's not a cure, but it makes it more likely people will survive, which is definitely a step in the right direction.
Thanks.
But no, I can't remember the name either.
No. So, but I mean, it's funny because obviously we deal with the Philippines a lot. The Philippines, our Philippine team, when I was talking to them about what the news yesterday, they were saying, "Oh, we've had this doctor talking about that all the time in the Philippines, but they quietened him down and everything because it hadn't been tested." So I'm hoping that we actually have some other things that come about as well. So, are there any more questions before?
Bruce has just said he missed the beginning and was asking about the Friday news. Yeah, yes, we did cover that earlier. Obviously, this recording will be available later. So rather than repeat ourselves, we recommend checking the recording. But it is mainly covering what I already covered in the blog post that I shared earlier this week.
And Bruce, I'll be sending it out pretty much after this because I just want to get it out to everybody. So you should get this not long after this recording's finished. Okay. Well, if there's any other questions before we say goodbye. Okay. Well, I'm going to say happy birthday to Steve again, and I do apologize for forgetting that at the start. If we were in the office, it'd be very different. He'd be bringing in cakes. And we'd probably go to the pub as well. So. That's honestly, it seems such a long time since I've been to the pub. I was not a big pub goer, but it does. Anyway, have a great Thursday. Enjoy the picnic day. Hope you have a picnic, and hope to see you next Thursday. Take care. Bye.